Looking at your picture now. I lost my picture.
We see you, Ira.
You do?
We see you, Ira. We
I'm
see him.
looking at you. You're in the center of the screen.
We'll start talking and you should get there.
Okay. So I was talking about the three definitions of this one reality. And the first one was, other than this one reality, there is no reality that's the same as it. The second definition is that other than this one reality, no.
Good,
Go
good.
ahead.
Other than this one reality, this one orange, this one space, other than that, there's no reality that's different from it, like an apple or a pear. There's nothing outside of it that's different than it. There's nothing other than it that's the same as it. And the third definition of this one reality is that within that reality, within the reality, there's no multiplicity. There's no duality in it. It's one homogeneous mass of consciousness. That's all that there is. That's all that there was. That's all that there ever will be. That's called the one reality without a second. That's the first unique teaching that is taught in these ancient texts. The most ancient texts in India are the Upanishads. They predate Buddhism, Jainism, any other philosophy is to be found in these texts. And this is what they teach, that there's one reality without a second, in the sense that I just told you. That's the first unique point about it. But this seems pretty dogmatic and actually almost ridiculous, because everyone's experience is that duality is real. The mere fact that we're all on Zoom and that I'm sitting here and you're sitting in front of, and there's trees and there's houses. Duality is everyone's experience. So this would seem to be not in anyone's experience, this claim that there's only one reality and there's nothing other than that. And in that reality, there's no duality whatsoever. Leave it aside. The second unique teaching is that one reality, they call it in Sanskrit tat, that, they also call it Brahman, which means absolute, tat Brahma, thatness, absoluteness, that one Brahma, which is without a second. The second unique teaching is that is yourself. That one reality is who you are. Every one of us, in truth, is that one reality. And that's expressed in the statement, tat, that, tam, you, asi, are. You are that. Not you will become that when you die and go to heaven. You'll become that when you raise your kundalini out of your head. You'll become that after meditating for 50. No, it's in the present tense. Asi, you are that here and now. That is who you are. Every one of us, in truth, is nothing but that. Yourself, in Sanskrit, the word is Atman. It's translated as self, but literally the word Atman means one's own true nature is Atman, a thing's true nature. So our true nature, who I really am, my Atman, is that one reality. Let me say, before I tell you the third unique point here, going back to the first point, that one reality, in Sanskrit, they call that one reality in which there's no multiplicity, nothing other than it, nothing inside of it. They call that Sat, Chit, Ananda. That one reality is what truly exists, but it doesn't exist in time or space, unlike this computer or the planet or the stars or the universe. This existence is not in time or space. It's timeless. It's spaceless. That's the meaning of Sat. Existence without time or space. We can't conceive of it because as soon as you try to think of something that exists, you put it in, oh, it's been existing, so it must be in time. If you take away time, you can't think of existence apart from time. But this existence is not in time and it's not in space. That's the meaning of Sat. And Chit means consciousness, but not like we think about it in our ordinary life, where we say, I'm conscious of that light, I'm conscious of this computer, I'm conscious, my consciousness is changing, I'm conscious of this, I'm conscious of that, and sometimes I'm unconscious. So conscious, that's not Chit. The word Chit means consciousness bereft of all objects. If you can take consciousness, your ordinary consciousness, and somehow try to remove every object that you're aware of, and just that consciousness remaining, that's called Chit. That's called Sat. That consciousness is not in time or space. Pure consciousness that exists, timeless consciousness, timeless awareness. That's called Sat Chit, and it's called Ananda. The word Ananda means bliss, but it doesn't mean the bliss like what I feel when I enjoy some object in the world and I become happy. It's not a bliss that's caused by anything. It's the bliss of my own self. It's the bliss of timeless awareness in which there's no fear, there's no desire, there's no limitation. It's the bliss that is not caused or dependent on anything, because the very nature of non-dual reality is bliss, is peace, uncaused. So to sum it up, existence beyond time and space, consciousness with no object, and happiness, bliss, not caused by anything. That's that one reality. And that's who you are. Tat Tvamasi. You are that. That's what the ancient Upanishads teach. That one reality, Tvamasi. Tat Tvamasi. You are that. I am Atma Brahma. That Brahman, which is the absolute, that is the self. That's who you are. Over and over again, this teaching is found in the Upanishads, that you are that reality. And it's not a reality that you have to attain. It's what your self is, what your true nature is. Now, this is another dogmatic, seemingly, statement. The first one, we have no idea that there's such a thing as one reality without a second. Nobody thinks that their self is that reality, because everyone here says, I am this, I am Ira. I'm sitting here in this room. I was born, I'm getting old, I'm gonna be sick, and I'm gonna die. I'm not Sat Chit Ananda. That can't be the case. So that's the second point, but it seems also something that I can't understand in my own experience. I know no non-dual reality, and I certainly don't know myself as that. I'm just a person in the world that's sometimes happy, sometimes sad, have fears, have desires, do things, enjoy things. I know things, some things I don't know. But I'm not Satchit Ananda, and I'm not one without a second. But that's exactly what these ancient wisdom teachings are saying. And the third unique thing is that when they say you are that, yourself, who you really are that, what they mean by you is not this body, not these senses, not the mind, and not the ego, all things that I take myself to be. I am fat, I am thin, I am blind, I am deaf, I taste, I smell, I am happy, I am sad, I believe, I don't believe. All of those things, especially the I am fat, I am thin, I am young, I am old, I am blind. This I, which is just another thought that's constantly changing, that is not the true self, according to these teachings. Then who is it? They call it the Sakshi, the direct witness. In every one of us, there's a witnessing consciousness that makes the body, the mind, the senses, and the ego appear. It appears to that. This I thought is just an object. It's not the true subject, even though we take this I to be the real subject. That I is a witness being witnessed by you. It appears to you. That witness, that is the self. That is what it means by you, the witness, or that, because this witness is the witness of the body, the mind, the senses, the ego, and the whole universe appears to that one witness. There's just one witness. It's like space. And we're all like each one of us. This individual here called Ira is like a cup in space. And inside the cup, there's cup space. And inside your cup and your cup and your cup, there's your cup space. You're a woman, you're a man, you're old, you're young. It's all the cups. But the space, there's just one space. But because it seems identified with the cup, it seems like there's many. But really, there's one self. That witnessing consciousness is what's in each one of us. That inner witness is not in time. Why? Because even time itself is an object. It appears to you. In dream, there's a dream time. That appears to you. In deep sleep, there's no time. It disappeared to you. You're the witness of time and space. That witness is not many. It's one, without a second. It's the unchanging reality, because it's not in time. That is Sat. It exists beyond time and space. That witness in you is chit. It's consciousness that has nothing to do with the objects that appear and disappear to it. It's bliss because it needs nothing, wants nothing, Nothing could affect it. It has no desires. It has no fears. It has no limitations. The bliss of the self. That witnessing consciousness in you is the true self according to these ancient teachings. But we never take note of this witness. Our minds are extrovert, and we just naturally take ourselves to be this I notion. I am this. It's not until you examine the facts of the matter, if you're willing to turn your mind inwards and examine your own experience, and we're going to do this when we examine the text that we're going to study in these talks in the next 4 lectures. But for now, it's enough to say that because we haven't examined what is the subject, who is the real knower, who is the witness, who's the experiencer, and what is it that's experienced? What is it that's really witnessed? What is it that's the object? And what is the subject? Because we haven't examined this in our own experience, we've all taken the subject to be the object. I, the subject, am fat. I, the subject, am old. I, the subject, am deaf or blind or smelling or tasting or touching. But the witness has none of those qualities. They appear and disappear, and just like space, unaffected. The little cup doesn't make space little. The big cup doesn't make space big. When you move the cup, you're not moving space. You can say the cup space was here and now it's there. But in truth, you've just identified the space with the cup. But really the cup, the space has no limitation of the cup. In fact, the very walls of the cup is in space. It doesn't divide the space at all. We just speak like that. But space is indivisible. In the same way that witnessing consciousness in you is the same witness in everyone. In the scriptures, they describe it, Ekatma Sarva Bhuteshu. There's one self in all beings. That the true self in me, that witnessing consciousness, is the same in all beings. Everyone can realize their own self as that one non-dual, ever-present, never changing, always shining, never hidden reality. So those are the 3 teachings. There's one reality. That reality is yourself, and the self is the witness, the direct seer, the seer that doesn't need eyes to see, that doesn't need ears to hear, that doesn't need sense organs to feel. It lights up everything. When it shines, everything appears. If it wasn't shining, nothing could appear. Whatever is appearing and disappearing does not affect the witness. The witness is called reality because it's the one thing that never changes. In these ancient texts, that's how they define reality. That which never changes, that is real. And that which is changing can't be real. When you examine your inner experience, you'll be able to discover that there is a principle in you that never changes. And we're going to talk about how we can realize that, how we can see that as an immediacy, kind of like how we see the berry on the palm of our hand, direct and immediate, sakshat aparokshat. that this self is not something that's away from us, that we don't know about. It's our immediate experience at all times. So this has to become a fact that we can validate for ourselves. And that's the purpose of this teaching. Now, because this witnessing consciousness in us can never be objectified, because it's the subject that can never be the object, we can't, it's not a thing. You can't use words to describe it because words are used to describe things. I know I called it the witness, I called it Brahman, I called it the self, but that's just to deny that it's other things. But it doesn't really tell us what it is. Those words just point us in a particular direction, but they don't really name it. And we can't conceive of it. Whatever you think of is not it. It's not red, it's not blue, it's not big, it's not small. It has no qualities. So the mind can't think of it, and words can't describe it. But this is what has to be taught to the student.
You can make it less strong. I don't know where to make less noise. Oh, I lost everything.
Gypsy, you have to mute your screen.
Who is that? I don't know who that is.
I think I recognize the voice. Whoever it is, please mute your screen if you can. So
You mute your screen on the bottom left-hand corner. Bottom left-hand corner, you mute the screen.
maybe she did it. Okay. All right. So I've kind of said a mouthful so far, I think. So let me continue. So this teaching, where is it found? The original teaching has been found about 800 BC. There were some people in India, and they composed these texts because they themselves were able to turn their minds back, introspect. They became inward looking. Even though our senses are all pointed out and the mind goes out and the mind is interested in all the things outside, and we spend our lives running after those things because we need food and we need shelter and we have to find a mate. We're hardwired for it. The natural tendency of the mind is to go out and to seek happiness outside. And we spend most of our time seeking that happiness and also trying to avoid unhappiness. But it seems that there must have been a time when some people realized that whatever happiness I get in that method, it never brings me lasting happiness. And death, I know, will steal it all away anyway. Is there a way that I can get happiness that will never end? Infinite, unending happiness. And the other thing, is there a way, even though I'm always trying to avoid unhappiness, is there some way that I could finally free myself from all suffering? I don't want to suffer, and I want to be happy forever. And it seems as though all of my pursuits will never bring me that as long as I'm looking for it outside. So these people, at some point, must have taken the search and turned it back in. And when they did that, for long enough, hard enough, with discrimination, and examined what are the facts of their experience, what are the actual facts, what are the phenomenological facts, they were able to see that there is a principle inside of them, that consciousness, it revealed itself to them, just like it can reveal itself to us if we turn our minds inwards. Because our minds and their experience and our experience are exactly the same. 800 BC, 2020, we're the same human beings. And what they were able to discover in their experience, anybody today who has the desire, who has the motivation, who has the discriminative capacity to realize that I really can't get any permanent happiness from any object. In fact, every object that I get, if I look at it closely, I'll understand that there's a defect in it because it's going to cause me suffering. The suffering is that it comes to an end. Antavanta. It has a beginning and it has an end. It's called the womb of suffering, these type of pleasures. Because the one that I love the most, the one that I desire the most, either they'll go and die or I'll have to leave them. Once this body goes, since I'm this body, I'll have to leave them or they will leave me. But this turning in, they discovered that there's a witnessing consciousness in them. And that consciousness, if you examine it closely, you'll see that it's not in time. It was never born. It doesn't get old. It doesn't get sick. It has no fears. That my true self, which is always present and never changing, this is what they discovered. And then this discovery brought them what they were looking for. It's called immortality, because the self is never born. When you realize I am that self, that timeless, birthless, ageless awareness, you transcend death. I am the immortal consciousness, which is ever the same, not in time or space. They realized that even though their minds could not conceive of it, and no words can describe it, they attained what's called the Parama Purushartha, the highest goal of human life, which is merely to recognize my true self. It's called Atma Jnana, the knowledge of my true self, who I am. That knowledge, upon attaining that, they wanted to communicate it to other people that were also, since everybody is really looking for this thing. Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to be free. And everybody wants to be immortal, meaning nobody wants to die. We're hardwired. When I say that everybody has a fear of death, I don't want to cease to exist. I want to be happy. And if possible, I'd like to be infinitely happy, endlessly happy. And I don't want to be limited. I want to be free. And these people, by this inward search, the spiritual journey, because that's what the spiritual journey is. It's an inward journey. It's not a matter of going to temples or singing mantras or changing your name. or wearing beads. It's a question of introverting the mind and examining the facts. So, these people, they call them Rishis. Rishi means a seer. These people saw that thing which you can't see with your eyes. These Rishis, that knowledge was revealed to them, not in the sense that God came to them and spoke to them the scripture and they wrote it down, but that reality of their own self, they were able to recognize the truth of it, what that self really is, and they were able to teach it to other people who were seeking for this same thing. That teaching is called the Upanishadic teaching. The teaching that there is an infinite bliss, and that is your true self. And that true self is the witnessing consciousness inside of you.
Mm.
And what they did was, this reality, since it has no qualities and can't really be taught by words, but the only way to teach is through words and through concepts, they devised a peculiar methodology, a peculiar way of bringing this wisdom to the student, so that the student himself, here and now, in this very life, could realize this truth for their self and attain the fruit of that knowledge. They called the fruit of that knowledge Jivan Mukti. Jivan means while living. Mukti means liberated. That the fruit of this knowledge is not something that happens after death, but right here and now, the moment you realize, I am that, you become free. The moment you realize the truth of that, you are that. In Sanskrit, it says Brahmavid, the knower of that reality, that inner consciousness, that witnessing, observing self. The knower of that, Brahmavid, Brahma Bhavati, is that. You are that. You are that non-dual reality, birthless, deathless, infinite bliss. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to make any effort, because that's your eternal nature. The question becomes, how does these teachers communicate this to someone who, in their ignorance, believes, I am this, aham idam, I am this, I exist from the tip of my toe to the top of my head. This is me. I'm limited. I was born, I'm getting sick, I'm going to get old, and I'm going to die. How can, to that person, how can it be communicated, this truth, which is beyond all words and all concepts? The scripture itself says, Yato vacho anavartanteya prapya manasasaha, that from which all words return, having failed to reach, along with the mind. Words can't describe it. The mind can't conceive of it. Whatever you think of is not it. Whatever word describes it, it's not that. It has no qualities, no action, no relation. It's one without a second. You can't conceive of it. So how does this get communicated? What is the method? Now, I'm going to talk about this method a little bit this evening, but I want to invite everyone who's really interested in this subject. What I would recommend, this is a little self-promotion. I have YouTube, and on that YouTube, the name of it is The 5 Fundamentals of Vedanta. I believe that's the name of it.
Right.
If you can somehow find the time to play that video, especially the
How do you
last,
spell your dancer? How do you spell your dancer?
No, I'm going to email it out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I'll email that out. I'll email
Gotcha,
out the
thank
link to that video.
Gotcha.
okay, so if you don't have to do it. It's not required, but if you really would like to have some time to do some thinking about it, the 5th point, which is the method by which this whole teaching takes place, it's a very subtle and unique type of, in Sanskrit it's called a prakriya, a methodology, that there has to be a method to do this. And you may not realize this, but there's many Upanishads, but there are what's called the 10 principal Upanishads. I won't list them all for you, it's not necessary. But each one of these 10 Upanishads, Brihadaranyaka, Chandogya, Prashna, Aitreya, Mundaka, Mandukya, Chandogya, I said, there are 10 of them. They all teach exactly the same thing. Some of them are this thick. And the text that we're going to take is this thick. It only has 12 verses, the whole text. But some of them are this thick. So, but every Upanishad is only teaching one thing. What's that? It's called the Tatparyam. The subject matter of the Upanishads is just one thing. And what is that thing? There's only one infinite bliss, and that's yourself. And that self is the witnessing consciousness in you. Every Upanishad, no matter what it is. But if you don't know that that's what they're teaching, you'll think that the Upanishads are teaching so many different things. In one Upanishad, they teach a teaching called the 5 sheaths. The body sheath, the mind sheath, the prana sheath, the knowing sheath, the bliss sheath, and then the true self. So that's called the teaching of the 5 sheaths. In another Upanishad, they teach what's called the seer and the seen. In another Upanishad, they teach that which is coming and going and that which remains. In another Upanishad, they teach that you have to know yourself. In another Upanishad,
Ira,
yes.
we're about to end. So when it ends, we'll come back and
Boy,